Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to continue exploring one variable data, and we are in section 1.3 where we are describing quantitative data with numbers. Today's goal is to be able to utilize technology to find what we call our one variable statistics or our summary statistics, which are our measures of center and spread. So I need you guys to have out your 1.3 part 1 notes. We're going to turn to page 2 where we're going to examine our example where we are looking at commute times of New Yorkers in minutes. Pause the video here to get access to those and resume once you're ready. All right, we should be ready to go now. We should also have a calculator ready to go. So turn it on by pressing that top right button, the home button, and you should come up to a screen that looks like this. If not, go ahead and click the home button, and we want to make a new document. So that's found by using the hotkey number 1. Press that, and it's going to ask if you want to save any unsaved documents. Well, we do not want to. We want to start fresh. So we're going to just use our arrow button over to highlight no and hit enter. Now, when we are entering in data, we actually don't jump to the data and statistics page. We have to actually create a list and spreadsheet page. That's number 4. So go ahead and use the hotkey number 4 to open up a list and spreadsheet. And you'll see something that looks like Google Sheets or Excel spreadsheets. And the first thing we want to do is actually give this thing a name. So I'm going to arrow up until I get to this top cell where there's a letter in the top left corner. And I want to give my variable a name, whatever it is that I'm entering in. Well, these numbers here in the stem and leaf plot are representing commute time, so I want to type in the letters CT to represent commute time. You can use pretty much anything you want, but you just want to make sure you avoid the common variables like X or Y because the calculator may have those reserved for something else. Okay. Then we want to go down to where the cells turn white because that's where we can enter in all of our data. We want to remember how to read the stem and leaf plot. The first numbers that we see here, the stem 0 and the leaf of 5, tells me that that's a commuter with a 5-minute commute time. The stem of 1 and a leaf of 0 is somebody with a 10-minute commute time. With a 1 and then a 5, that's a 15-minute commute time. So go ahead and enter in all of your data in just that first column. Go ahead and follow along with me. Pause the video if you need to enter in all of your data. All right, so we should be back here now with 20 data puts input into our list and spreadsheet. And the one thing you want to notice is where my cell that's highlighted is. It's in an empty cell and there's no cursor flashing. You need to make sure that you hit enter after you have typed in your last cell entry. If you do not, you're not going to be able to perform any calculations. So make sure you hit enter so that way you know that all of your data is input and registered in your calculator. Now, we want to find the summary statistics, which are going to be our measures of center and our measures of spread. This includes your mean and standard deviation, and it also includes your 5-number summary, your minimum, quartile 1, median, quartile 3, and maximum. And this is going to help us be able to completely describe our distribution. Okay? So let's go ahead and get to that. This is a fairly complicated process for the calculator to do. We know it would take us some time to do by hand. So anything complicated is going to be found by looking in the menu button. Go ahead and press the menu button, and we are going to start working with statistics. Now that's option number 4. You can see the symbol X bar. That's one of our sample statistics, so that makes sense. Choose option number 4, and we want to go into menu number 1, stack calculations. Once we're in here, we want to actually calculate the one variable statistics. That's what our calculator calls the summary statistics. And we're working in one variable because we only have the one commute time in New York in minutes. So choose option number 1. Next, it's asking us how many lists we actually have. Well, we only have one list. It's just one data set. Almost always you're going to be only working in one data set. So just go ahead and press the OK button or press enter to move on to the next option. Now, there's only one thing that needs to change here, even though there are 5 different options, and that's our X1 list that we see right here. We just want to make sure that it's the variable that we associated this with. And remember, we named our variable CT to stand for commute times. So what I like to do is use my arrow button to click over a couple of times until I see the drop-down menu. And then I want to use my arrow button to highlight CT commute time. And I want to click enter. So this is what we are going to be calculating the one variable statistics of. The frequency list, category list, and everything else there is moot for us. We don't need to address those. All we need to do is just press enter one more time to find our summary statistics. You might look at this, it comes back to this screen, it looks like nothing happened. But you should also notice that now in this second row, we call it a function row, it shows us what function was performed, a one variable statistics function. So there is information there, we just need to use our arrow keys to go up to find it. And there we can start to see all kinds of information. Now, at the very bottom of the list, we can see n. Lowercase n is representing our sample size. We had 20 New York commuters. And here's our 5-number summary in our min, quartile 1, median, quartile 3, and max. So this should match what you already had in your notes. So that means we did everything correctly the last class. If we continue to go up higher, we will see some more information. We see sigma, x, that's a population standard deviation, and we see s. X, that's our sample standard deviation. The calculator doesn't know if you conducted a sample survey to get this data or if this was from a census, so you have to make the right choice of which one to use. Since we know there are more than 20 New Yorkers that are commuting to work, we can safely say that we should be using S sub x for our standard deviation to describe this. Now, what this number means might be a little bit confusing, but we're not there yet. We will discuss standard deviation in greater detail next time. What we want to look at next is x bar. X bar, we remember that's our sample mean. So this is showing me that I have a commuter. The average commuter in New York has a 31.25 minute commute time. Okay, so what do we do with this summary statistics? Well, usually we want to write them down. Our questions are going to ask us to find the appropriate measures of center or spread. And then we use that in our SUCS description when we're talking about shape, unusual, center, and spread. Okay, but we also want to use this to be able to make a box and whisker plot. The box and whisker plot is a graph. We'll show you what it looks like in a moment, but it's going to represent the 5-number summary. And from this, we are also going to be able to see outliers being calculated as well. So how do we make that? Well, pause to make sure that you're caught up and ready, and we will take a look at that in just a moment. So now we're actually ready to graph and make our box and whisker plot. What we need to do here is we need to actually make a new page. And you can see right here in the yellow or blue text that there's a plus page button here. There's no button associated with it, but it's above the dock button. So what we need to do next is we need to actually press the control button. You don't need to click and hold, just press it once and then press dock, and that will access the option to bring up a new kind of page. And the kind of page we want is actually a data and statistics page. This is how we construct a graph using our calculator. So we want to choose menu option number 5. Go ahead and type that in. And you'll see that there's this random scattering of dots all over the place, but there is no variable anywhere to be found. So you want to use your trackpad that's in the center here to go down to your x-axis and click on it, because it says click to add variable and it says CT. So use that trackpad to move over and click on CT. Now, this makes something that looks familiar. This is our stem and leaf plot. But we don't want that right now. We want a box plot because the box plot is going to give us the 5-number summary all in one. Okay? Now again, this is going to be something that's a little bit more complicated. So anything that's complicated, we're going to go to our menu button. And then we are going to look at option number 1 where we can change the plot type. So choose option number 1. And then it gives us all the different kinds we can make. And we want to choose option number 2, a box plot. Now, the box plot is instantly made for us and ready for us to transfer. You'll notice that it gives you a really decent x-axis scale here. It even labels the x-axis as CT, showing that that's the commute time. So you want to follow all of the keys here to transfer this kind of graph to your paper. But what is this graph actually showing us? Well, we can use our mouse to highlight over this space. So use your trackpad to highlight over. And when I highlight over this left whisker, I see that number 5. Well, that was my minimum value. Then we can look over here and it labels Q1 is the start of the box in the box and whisker plot, and that's at 15. The next line that we have through the box is showing us our median, and that's at 22.5. You can probably guess what's going to be at the end of the box. That's going to be quartile 3, and that was at 42.5 minutes. Now, we see that the whisker ends at 65 minutes, and that seems weird because you might have thought that's supposed to be our maximum. Well, actually, our maximum is identified by this dot over here, and that's 85 minutes. So this is what we call a modified box plot when we see that there is an actual dot on the box plot. This is going to represent anything that's an outlier by the 1.5 IQR rule, which during last class we did calculate and we found that this was indeed an outlier. Okay, so where does the whisker part of the box and whisker plot end if we don't have any, or if we have outliers? If we have if we do have outliers, then we see that this ends at 65. Okay, well, if we look at our stem and leaf plot, we notice that 65 was that next point. Now, this did not fall in the outlier boundary. So the whisker in your box and whisker plot will end at the last point that is not an outlier. Okay, so armed with this information now, you know how to calculate your summary statistics if you need to find your mean or your standard deviation or any part of your 5-number summary. You know you can go back to your list and spreadsheet, enter in your data, and calculate your 1-variable statistics. If you would like to construct a box plot by hand, you can just go ahead and make that box and whisker plot using the 5-number summary now that you see how it's supposed to be constructed. If, however, you want to use technology to do the 1.5 times the IQR outlier calculations, it's a really handy tool because it will show you a modified box plot in which we can see where there may or may not be any outliers. Okay? One last note to discuss about this. If your calculations do not yield any outliers, your distribution is mostly symmetrical with no outliers, then that's fine. You're just going to see the whisker is going to extend all the way out to the maximum. Okay, and we will end up seeing examples of that as you work through your practice. So, armed with this information now, please use this video as a reference tool to continue to go back and find the instructions on how to calculate these things using your calculator. But I want you to go ahead and start on your 1.3 Part 1 examples that you had last class, and those will be your formative assessment for today. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you do have any questions, please feel free to email me and ask me during our next class. Thanks very much. Have a great day.